Thank you. Thank you all for being here at our kickoff session for the 67th annual meeting MEC PowerPlay. My name is Christy Kilroy. I work in policy and research at MEC, and I'm glad to be able to introduce our first panel this morning. Our session is entitled Putting Your Community in the Place of Greatest Opportunity. I hope you'll listen from a place of your community and what you could maybe hear from our great panelists today and take back to implement in your own community. Our presenters, all economic development professionals, come from very different communities. We have Cary Karlson from the Washington County Economic Alliance, up in the Mississippi Delta. Yeah. Got some morning people in here. That's great. Chad Newell with the Area Development Partnership in Hattiesburg. And Mr. Mitch Stringer from the South Mississippi Electric Power Association. You will notice on your schedule that Chandler Russ was on the agenda this morning. Unfortunately, he's had a family emergency, and he's not going to be able to be here with us, but it's going to be a great session nonetheless. So each of our panel presenters this morning has been asked to give about a 15-minute presentation, and we'll wrap it up at the end with a few questions, and we appreciate that. We're going to jump right into it. Our first speaker today is Cary Karlson. As I mentioned, he is with the Washington County Economic Alliance. He was born and raised in Greenville, Mississippi, and graduated from Washington School in 1972. He then graduated from Delta State University in 1977 with a business management degree, and he worked in his family business, Lina's Interiors, for 30 years as a product designer. In 2009, Cary began remodeling the old Allied Van Lines building on Highway 82 in Greenville after an 18-wheeler landed in the front office. That's a great project, I'm sure. In June of 2010, he and his wife, Craig, opened Montage Marketplace with 28 exhibitors displaying antiques, gifts, and clothing. Cary joined, and this is a great story of how he got involved in economic development, but he joined the Delta Economic Development Center as a chamber member in 2010. And as a former local chamber person, I love that. I love this story that you got involved as a volunteer and where you are now is great. And he served on the executive committee in 2011 and 2012. In February of 2012, that same committee called on him to serve as the executive director of that organization. He served in that role for about 4 years now, and he's got a great information to share with you. Please help me welcome Cary Karlson.
Thanks, Christy.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Is it on?
Yes.
Yeah. Let me get my timer going here, folks. Welcome. Thank all of y'all for being here today. Before I start, I want to ask just a couple questions, just so I can kind of understand who's here. How many are community leaders, for example? Would you raise your hand? Okay. How many are public officials? And how many are economic development group folks like us? Okay, good. I'm going to kind of tell you where we started and where we think we are now, but I really want to, kind of give you some points and kind of give you a little background. 5 years ago when I came to this was my first NBC to come, and I'd been on the job for 2 months and didn't know what I was doing. So I learned a lot, and I really learned a lot that first time I came because they had Jack Welch speak on Boomtown. And if you hadn't ever had a chance to read this book, it's a pretty good idea of what small communities and even mid-sized communities have had success doing. So that was great inspiration for me. And I took some of his points and kind of some of my points, I've kind of narrowed it down to, to 4 things. That you really got to build relationships with your local people and your state people, but more than that, you really got to build the trust. And I can tell you in the beginning, we didn't really have much trust thought of us in Washington County, particularly with the state folks. You got to look for and develop whatever your assets might be. It doesn't have to be an economic development asset, maybe a tourism asset. Again, you just kind of really got to look for and develop those. You got to leverage what resources you have, and I'll give you a couple ideas on that. And you got to celebrate your small victories. meaning the victories that you personally have as well as the victories that your community has. And I need to have a confession that I told y'all. Y'all figured out from my bio that I didn't really know what I was getting into, and that's kind of what Frank Howell at Delta Council, first time he met with me, he said, you really didn't know what you got yourself into, and I don't think you have any idea what the work you got ahead of you, and he was right. But I want to show you there are a couple good things that are happening, actually several good things happening in Washington County. We have had several good announcements over the last year. We got a $1.2 million investment coming with the Cabot Lodge downtown. We're remodeling an old hotel. The second slide, we're remodeling the Sears building. There's one local individual that's putting $9.1 million into making this into a boutique hotel, a brewery, retail, and apartments. So we're looking forward to that. The construction's already begun on that. The next slide down, the federal courthouse, we've got a $45.3 million new courthouse that will be built in Greenville in Washington County. That should be within the next 3 years. They're in the process of selecting a site, so we're excited what that's going to do to help our downtown. And the final business announcement, Mars last year announced a $31 million investment to build an R&D center, the world R&D center in Greenville, Mississippi for all their food products. So small expansion of jobs, but we're really excited for what our local industries have done. And in addition to that, we've got another group, the Delta Housing Authority, Greenville Housing Authority, that's starting a new subdivision, $4.1 million investment in that. So we've got the first new housing development in Greenville in the last probably 20 years or so. But I want to kind of give you where we were to help those of you that may have been kind of as lost as I was 5 years ago when I started. The only building I had to market is the one that says no bathroom, because it had no bathroom. In our industrial park was 200 acres, a little bit chopped up, and the first time we tried to figure a project on it, I found out that we didn't have electricity to the site, and it was going to cost a little over $1 million to put electricity. So I backed up and said, we got to do something different. And during this period, when we took this role, we'd gone through two not so satisfactory economic development officials. And my group, and really it was 3 or 4 of us, Dave Clark was my chairman, Johnny McCright, who I don't think made it here today. And really the 3 of us kind of huddled together and said, we've got to develop, better relationships, and we've got to figure out what we got and develop our assets. And at the time when we started, we had a $35,000 budget deficit in our group, and the newspaper wanted to destroy us, which the happiest day in my life in the beginning was when the newspaper publisher left town. So like I say, one of those small victories that you relish. And I also found out after my first month there that all of my employees had been told by the previous guy they were going to get fired. And that's pretty earth-shaking when you have one of them ask you, are we really going to get fired? So we had a lot of work to do to build relationships, and again, we still are working to build relationships. I'll tell you one funny story, and I don't think the person I would like to kind of pick on here is here, but my first day on the job, Jim Barksdale was interim MDA director, and they came to meet with our mayor, and we had the supervisors there, we had folks from the next town over, we had MDA officials there. And literally, it's my first day on the job, and this MDA official on the other end of the table says, well, I hope this new guy you've hired is better than the last 2 clowns you've hired. And I thought to myself, who in the hell is this Mickey Milligan guy? So Mickey's a good friend of mine, and I'm sorry he's not here to help me pick on him. But anyway, those are kind of the stories of what we had to deal with. So we started off really working with MDA because you really got to have a relationship with them and get them to work with you. And the thing I did find is so many groups really wanted to help us. They just need to understand us and trust us. And the first thing that kind of on our agenda was we were having an annual meeting. In the previous year, they had lost $7,000, and I knew we couldn't afford to lose that. So we restructured our annual meeting and made $11,000. So we'd had an $18,000 turnaround from one year to the next. We worked on embracing our chamber division because it had really been totally ignored. And we added networking events like a golf tournament and a 5K run on July 4th, using those also to raise money to help defray our deficit. And then we began work on workforce, which I'll get into a good bit later. So in the process with other individuals and all of us working, we developed two sites, and I've kind of gotten off my slides here, but we developed two sites, Greenpoint and 61 and 82. So I went from 200 acres of land that I didn't have power located there to 1,200 acres plus. Both these sites have all the utilities either on site, underground, waiting to go. So we were fortunate to find these two areas that we were able to get under option, and we were able to convince our board to take a CD and borrow against that CD to the tune of about $40,000 to do all the site development costs. And I won't bore everybody here, but all those economic developers know that you've got to do the soil borings and the phase one environmentals and all those types of things to have a site really ready to go. So we borrowed against that CD, and by the time the year was over, we didn't really need to borrow. We had cash flow the year, so we were able to basically pay for that out of cash flow out of our money. Also during that period in 2013, we were able to get some buildings back at the airport, which I'll show you a little more about that. And I'm going to show you quickly just our two sites, just so you know kind of the work that goes involved. If you're not involved in the economic development end, you've got to show everyone where the electrical is, where the gas is, water is, all these things. Well, we found out in our first study of Greenpoint that we didn't know we have two 24-inch natural gas lines running on the site. And from what I understand from others in the state, we are the only site in Mississippi that has one 24-inch gas line, and we have two. So we're pleased for that little tidbit of information. And this is our Leland site, which is great, right at the intersection of two 4-lane highways. Again, all the industrial group is there that we need. We have it's a good distribution site, we think. So we're pleased to have this, and it's also very close to rail. This is just a quick view of our airport buildings. We've got four buildings actually ranging from 25,000 feet to 200,000 feet that we're looking to market. So we've got a great asset there. The airport has an 8,000-foot runway and a 7,000-foot runway. So again, it's a great asset, but the part that we know we still got to work on is workforce, and again, I'll get into that a little bit later. But what we were able to do with this money to do the sites, we applied for a grant from MDA and received a partial grant to help pay for these site development costs, and we rolled that money into the Leland site. So we basically developed both properties for about $40,000, getting the Leland community to put a little money in and the landowner to put money in. So I think my folks that work in this industry would be pretty pleased if you could get two sites done out of $40,000. And also at that time, MEC was kind enough to fund a project competitive study, and many of you will know about that. Greenville was considered in that, and we were able to have the site consultants come visit with us. Unfortunately, the day they arrived in an ice storm. So we had to take them out to the site, and those of us who went out there, we had to dodge two 18-wheelers that were that were across the road. And we were able to go out to the site, come back to our office, answer all the questions, and that was the first time we'd ever completed a project with really no questions of things you got to do later or information you got to get later. So that was one of our other moments of celebration when that group left with the ice melting, that we had really finally gotten ourselves where we thought we would be competitive with anybody. The latest thing we're working on, we're on the Mississippi River, and there are very few sites that won't flood anymore. And we've used up all of our available land, so we're fortunate that this land was given back to the levee board from the Corps of Engineers. It's 175 acres that has river access. It's sitting on the lake, but right now it'll flood. So we're in the process of doing site development work. We've done 2 of the 4 things that need to be done. We've just gotten a small grant in the last few weeks to finish the site development costs. Now the big challenge comes is to raise $15 million to build up 50 acres. But we see that as a long-term play that we as our community see great value in. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the Work Ready program and what we're doing there. We started with one manufacturer reaching out to me probably the third month that I was in office saying, Cary, I got a problem. I've interviewed 200 people and I only found one I could hire. And I said, yeah, we got to work on that. So it took us 6 months. We were able to develop a workforce training program with our community college there in Greenville, and we required everyone to take the National Career Readiness Certificate test, which is now called that. The state had that test, but they were not part of the national certification. So we've now done 12 classes with this, and we've continued to see the value of what ACT and this test does. So what we've embarked upon, and I know Hinds County is starting down this path, 7 other counties throughout the state, mostly in the Delta, are doing this. They've got a workforce certification program. And what this does is it tells you and the community what the status of your workforce is. And we quickly learned that this test, and I'll get into it in a moment, what this test does, but what we liked about this program is it brings all the different groups working together. We've got the employers involved, we've got the educators involved, leadership of the community, the workforce, Delta Workforce Investment Board. So we're really pleased of the value of this. Quickly, what this test is, it focuses on 3 things. This ACT test primarily is working on locating information for you, reading from information, and applied mathematics. And there are 4 grade levels at how you work through this. So there's a bronze, a silver, a gold at 21%, and platinum at 1%. And this is these are national averages that I've given you here. So you get an idea of what is required to be under these different levels. I think you'll be surprised, and we were a little bit too, that Washington County is only 1 percentage point behind the national average. And to us, what's even better about it, we've had 535 people tested. I've had 35 school kids tested. I've had no college kids tested. So every one of basically these 500 people have been unemployed people, and many of them do not have high school or college educations. So we've got people that have the talent level to be able to do these jobs. And I asked the state to give me some numbers of what these different levels would pay throughout the state, and fortunately MDA was kind enough to do this. I think you'll see that a silver level will pay living wage in many of these jobs. Again, all of these things need training, and that's what we're excited about because we see the potential of what training can be done to make this happen. But I really need to thank the Community College Board, Dr. Andrea Mayfield and her team they've now certified all our scores through the ACT database. So we've gone from being one of the few states that didn't really have any scores to now having 50,000 scores throughout the state. So you'll hear more and more about this because more and more companies are using it. I want to give you kind of briefly where we started out. When we started this program in December, we were at 13% of our goal number, and you can see there's an emerging level, a current level, a transitioning level, and an employee supporting level. The emerging level are your high school kids and college kids. The current are those who are working. The transitioning are those that are unemployed or looking for work. And then you have to get a certain number of businesses to support this initiative. So this is where we are right now with the numbers rolled over and the testing that we've done. We feel like we've got a 2-year window in which to be certified. We think we'll be certified sometime this year. We've got to finish the school kids and some of our transitioning. So we're happy with the progression there. These are our employers supporting this in Washington County. We've had great support and understanding of this program, and I hope others will consider it because I think it's really the ticket that we'll have. Just a couple of the points just to let you know. The state of South Carolina has pretty much got every county certified doing what we're doing. They got 42 counties, 40 of them are certified. Their silver level ranking for the state is 55%, same level as Washington County. The state of Mississippi is 58%. But this gives us a tool as economic developers, Chad, and the rest of us, to be able to show what your workforce is, what the talents are, what can be done. And I guess finally I'll end up just with a couple other points. I read a lot, and I really, try to study and understand this. And I've got this information on the last slide, but there are a couple things here. Part of them are funny, but part of them are real. This Flow of Money by James Fruth really kind of helps you understand what economic development does in your community. And he's got a great website, and you can really see where your region is or your city is compared to others throughout the state. So I recommend that you take a look at that. This is not intended toward any of my public officials in Greenville, Mississippi, please understand. But there are things in here that I use because there are times when you really find people that are unhappy with you. There's chapter 8 about showing your belly, how you end up getting through some of that. But I want to thank all of you for coming today. I want to particularly thank my community for supporting me and allowing me the opportunity to learn and grow in this job, particularly my wife, who kind of fired me and got me this job. I think she really wanted to get rid of me out of the business, and she's actually doubled the amount of vendors at her business since I left. So I guess there's some truth that maybe she needed to be the economic developer. And I know I've run over time, but I thank y'all for your attention, and I'll be glad to answer any questions later.
Thank you, Cary, so much. Washington County is sure lucky to have you, and we just appreciate you sharing that with us. Our next speaker is Chad Newell, who serves as president of the Area Development Partnership in Hattiesburg, a position he has held since December of 2009. The ADP is the regional Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development organization for Greater Hattiesburg, serving Forest, Lamar, and Perry counties. Chad has worked in the private, public, and private nonprofit sectors for more than 2 decades in Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee. He's led teams in facilitating projects that resulted in the investment of billions of dollars, that's with a B, yes, absolutely, and thousands of jobs created across the southeastern United States. He's keenly focused on servanthood leadership, hiring right fit talent, and creating an intentional corporate culture that drives results. Chad is a native Mississippian and holds a bachelor's degree in economics from Mississippi State University and earned a master's degree in economic development from the University of Southern Mississippi. 2 great schools there, thank you. He and his wife Jennifer have been married for 22 years and have 2 sons, Garrett and Brooks, and 1 daughter, Jordan. Please help me welcome Chad Newell.
Well, good morning, guys. It's great to be here with you. Thanks for coming out early. Hope you've had lots of coffee. Cary, great job. I'm proud of the job that you're doing up in the Delta. That's exciting. I tell you, I'd love to see all of our respective communities around the state prosper. I'm going to talk a little bit today about leadership and preparation and funding, and we'll get into that momentarily, but I wanted to let you all know, if you didn't see the news yesterday and today, we had a nice $100 million groundbreaking ceremony in Hattiesburg yesterday. I tell you, we've been blessed immensely in my 6.5 years in Hattiesburg. We've had a lot of days with $100 million announcements, and that is really a rarity. I mean, it's like finding a needle in a haystack, as you know, trying to recruit companies to your community. The announcement yesterday was in partnership with Mississippi Power. Johnny Atherton and Brian Usforge are here today. Guys, thanks for the partnership and relationship in Hattiesburg. Silicon Ranch made the $100 million announcement. They are putting in a 450-acre solar farm in the city of Hattiesburg in Forest County. It's going to be a 50-megawatt solar farm, which is pretty amazing. Can you imagine 450 acres of solar panels? We are pumped about it. There's another project that is on the solar farm side of the equation that we'll be having a groundbreaking ceremony for probably in the next month or so. And when all of this transpires in Greater Hattiesburg, we're literally going to be a solar hub of the Deep South, without a shadow of a doubt. North Carolina has an inordinate amount of solar. Georgia has some solar. But when you look at Mississippi Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. Hattiesburg, Mississippi is going to be the solar hub of the Deep South. So what does that mean? First of all, it's great in and of itself, having renewable energy on the grid and having these major capital investments. By the way, this project is going to create 400 construction jobs, so it's really going to stimulate the local construction market. But above and beyond that, it helps companies perceive us differently. We're going to be kind of in an elite category, high-tech category. There are a lot of companies, a lot of corporations that want to locate in areas that have green energy on the grid. So I look forward in the years to come to see how that pays dividends for our community. Now back to preparing your community for economic development success. I'm going to start at a macro level, and then we're going to work our way quickly down to a micro level. First, you have to have an organization that everybody believes in. So for you economic development professionals out there, if your community doesn't believe in what you're doing, you know that it makes your job more difficult. Fortunately, I've got a great private and public sector pulling in the same direction. So as I often like to say, you got to have folks that drink the Kool-Aid. They've got to believe in what you're doing. So that's of paramount importance. As John Maxwell says, everything rises and falls on leadership. So I encourage you to be a servanthood leader, to recruit servanthood leaders on your board of directors. We have a 30-person board of directors at the Area Development Partnership. We cover Forest, Lamar, Perry counties, 150,000 population area. We have great relationships with our public sector, but we are driven by the private sector. I encourage you to get your private sector on board with you. Have great relationships with your mayor and your council and your supervisors, but do not neglect the private sector who's out there creating jobs and making it happen on a daily basis. They can help you tremendously. Within our organization, while we have a large board of directors, we have a small executive committee, or fairly small compared to the 30-person board of directors. We have a 9-person executive committee, and it's really comprised of CEOs in Greater Hattiesburg. I view my executive committee as an advisory committee. They're consultants. They help guide. They help guide me. They're there when I have questions. I can bounce things off of them. So I encourage you to have a close-knit group of advisors within your organization. Also, certainly it's important to have a diverse board. Diversity is crucial. But at the end of the day, have as many CEOs as you can on your board. CEOs just typically get it. They're CEOs for a reason. They are running their respective businesses, and they can think at a high level and provide good strategy, and they can also do something else. They can provide money. They have access to the purse strings. So, again, it's not rocket science, but I encourage you to get your CEOs involved. If you have a lot of CEOs on the sidelines in your community, that's a red flag. You're in trouble. You need to get your CEOs in the fold with you. The ADP is a private, nonprofit organization, so I really commend our community leaders in 1992 for forming the organization. So we are in our 24th year. It's a private nonprofit with 850 members ranging from mom-and-pop shops to multinational corporations. So we're the Regional Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development Agency. So if you think about it, 24 years ago, our community leaders had the vision to combine the Chamber of Commerce and the economic development effort and put it under one umbrella. That was fast forward 25 years later to 2016, that was a wise move. Hattiesburg's economy is on fire. It's not happenstance. It was good planning, good commitment, and good execution. So I encourage you also to think regionally. We serve Forest, Lamar, and Perry counties. It's not always easy holding a regional alliance together, but it sure pays dividends for our state and for South Mississippi in our case. We are also the one-stop shop. I hope your elected officials have confidence in what you're doing, because our elected officials have total confidence that we can handle the economic development side of the equation. So what they do is they outsource their economic development efforts to us. When a site selection consultant calls, when MDA calls, when a corporate leader calls, we are the one-stop shop. They don't go to City Hall and the supervisors, and they don't go to 3 counties and 5 different economic development agencies. They come to us. And so I encourage you to consolidate as much as you can. Certainly I know some communities have multiple chambers, multiple economic development agencies, and I hope that works well for your area. But even if you are not under one umbrella, please partner with the guy next door or the gal next door so that you know what's going on and you can work cohesively as a unit. Quickly, on the funding side, you have to have a well-funded organization in order to achieve economic development success. Now, well-funded is going to be different for every community. In a community of 5,000 people, well-funded is going to be at a smaller level. In our case, our organization has a $1.8 million budget for our Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development effort. 65% of those funds come from the private sector, 35% from the public sector. Think about that. It's driven by the private sector. The public sector plays a big role, and they step up and they participate, and in fact, they just increased their contributions to our organization. But the private sector provides 65% of the 1.8 million. So why is the funding important? Because you can have the right staff, you can retain the staff, you have the resources. If you need to be on a plane and go to Chicago or New York or California or wherever you need to be, you can do it. In our organization, we can be anywhere, anytime, because we've got the resources to do that. So I encourage you, for those private sector leaders and public sector leaders in the audience, it's really a challenge that I'm giving you. Fund your economic development agency at a level where they don't have one arm tied behind their back. If you don't fund them, they're just going to limp along. It's just a fact. So I encourage you to be proactive. Our 3 major public sector agencies that fund us are the City of Hattiesburg, Forest, and Lamar counties, and they do a great job in supporting us. And really, we don't get any economic development deals across the finish line without them. So it doesn't really matter how well we're funded if you don't have those relationships with the public sector. So make sure you're building the relationships that you need to. On the private sector side, we just had a very successful campaign. We raised $3 million with the private sector to go solely toward our economic development effort. So again, that was from 142 investors, from small businesses to large businesses. So take a look at what your private sector is doing there. I'm going to take switch gears just a bit here. We're going to talk quickly about a great staff and a winning culture. Get the right people on board the bus with you and have them in the right seats, and then turn them loose. Let them go to work. I've got the thing that I do that means more than anything else at the ADP is hire people. I've got a great staff. I've got a 13-person staff, and they do fabulous work. And so I encourage you to make sure you're getting the right people on board, and then have that winning culture. Believe that you can win, whether your community has 10,000 people or 2 million people. Believe in yourself and in your community that you can win, because if you don't believe it, you're certainly going to get knocked out of the competition. And so make sure you have that positive attitude and believe in yourself and your team. You have to build a pipeline of talent. I've got a lot of millennials on my staff, and these millennials are outstanding. Millennials often, they move around a bit more than maybe some of us have in our careers, and so I would rather have a great millennial for 3 years than a mediocre employee for a decade. So I encourage you to build a pipeline of talent, get good people within your organization, and then also I'm a big believer that one of the most fun things that I do is mentor others. Mentor your staff. If you're not mentoring them and investing in them and letting them grow and prosper, then guess what? They're going to leave more quickly. They're just going to leave and go to another organization. It's all about having your staff feeling fulfilled. So I think we all have to continue to do that. When I used to work for the Mobile Chamber of Commerce back in the mid-90s, we had a slogan that product knowledge is customer service. I hope you know your product. As you're out touting your respective regions, product knowledge is customer service. You have to know your product to be able to convey to the consultants and to the business leaders your message of why they should locate in your community. Recruiting a company is like finding the needle in a haystack, and so you better be darn good at what you do if you're going to have any opportunity for success. As Cary said earlier, celebrate your successes. If you hit a single or a double, don't wait on the home run to celebrate. Go ahead and celebrate when you hit a single or a double. If you're not celebrating, nobody else is going to come pat you on the back and celebrate with you. Just do that internally within your staff. Be creative and flexible. I'm going to give you a couple of quick examples. A few years back, we had an opportunity to recruit General Dynamics Information Technology, part of a Fortune 100 company in General Dynamics. They needed 100,000 square feet of office space. Well, Hattiesburg's a small metro area, 150,000 population. We don't just have 100,000 square feet of office space available in our community, so we had to be creative. What we did was we took a location in a former mall, Cloverleaf Center, and we took a former Steinmart that was 65,000 square feet and combined it with an additional 35,000 square feet of space, and we built out 100,000 square feet of office space. So being flexible allowed General Dynamics to choose our community, and they employ 1,200 people in Hattiesburg today. So that's one example. Another example, we recently, a year or two ago, we recruited a company called Green Bay Converting. Green Bay Converting is a paper manufacturer out of Green Bay, Wisconsin. They wanted to build a new facility in Hattiesburg after we went through the site selection process they did. And they built a 400,000 square foot, shiny, new, gorgeous facility. Well, toward the end of the process, they were taking customers through their new building. They happened to roll a customer through, and the CEO of this company, his name's Tony Curtis, and the company's called Sofidel. It's the second largest paper company in Europe, the sixth largest paper company in the world, with $2 billion a year in sales. As Greg Santaga, the CEO of Green Bay Converting, had Tony Curtis, the CEO of Sofidel, walking through this gorgeous new 400,000 square foot building, Tony Curtis said, I sure would like to purchase your building. And Greg Santaga said, well, what? We're about to move into it soon. And so long story short, I won't bore you with all the details, but we landed 2 companies because of flexibility and our ability to move swiftly. Green Bay Converting stayed in their leased premises in Hattiesburg, and they've created over 100 jobs. Sofidel purchased the 400,000 square foot building. Now they're investing $120 million in our community and hiring another 250. So I tell you that story to say, be flexible, be creative, do not be rigid. Being rigid can lead to poor results. So I thought you would enjoy those couple of examples. Finally, I'm going to close, and Mitch is like, good, I need a little time, with a couple of comments on game-changing projects in your community. Be sensitive to the fact that game-changing projects take an inordinate amount of time. Don't be trying to run your economic development CEO out of town when they've been working on a project for 5 or 6 years. Some projects take a long time to come to fruition. I'll give you 2 good examples. Midtown Hattiesburg is an area in between the University of Southern Mississippi, Forest General Hospital, and Hattiesburg Clinic. There are 7,000 employees and 14,000 students clustered within a several block area. It's probably one of the top I'd probably say 3 employment nodes in the state of Mississippi. Well, that area developed through the years is a little bit of a hodgepodge of things. For those of you who have been through there, you know you may have an old apartment complex. Oh, well, there's a branch bank, and there's a vacant lot. So what we did is we developed a master plan. We overlaid it. We developed a $300,000 master plan, by the way. We overlaid it with a TIF district. We put in form-based code to guide the zoning, to guide the quality of the development in that area. But I tell you that to say that I've been in Hattiesburg now 6.5 years. I've been working, as many people have been, on Midtown Hattiesburg for 6.5 years. And just now we're starting to see the fruits of the labor. Hattiesburg Clinic just built a $10 million new administrative building in Midtown, built to the new form-based codes. We're working with Rob Tatum, a local developer, on doing a mixed-use development that's going to have an Indigo hotel, retail, restaurants. We're going to be able to have business prospects come in, stay at an Indigo, walk them to dinner right across from the university. But if we would have given up, or if people would have gotten frustrated, none of this would have been possible. So I encourage you to keep the faith and be patient, because some things, game-changing projects, take a long period of time. The other game-changing project that we're working on is called Eagle One. It's a 2,200-acre mega industrial site that has 3 miles of frontage on Interstate 59 and sandwiched right in between U.S. Highway 11 and I-59. We haven't landed a mega project on Eagle One yet, but we will. It has, we've done an inordinate amount of due diligence, probably spent over $250,000 on due diligence studies. We've got marketing videos, marketing plans. So I tell you that just to say that you got to spend money to make money and create jobs, and you've got to do that to be well prepared. Thanks to MEC for having us today, and all the great work, Christy, that you guys do. And I'd be remiss if I didn't put in a plug for this. I'm the volunteer president over the Mississippi Economic Development Council this year, and we're having our summer conference in Natchez. It's the 300th anniversary of Natchez, so I encourage you to sign up for the MEDC Summer Conference. We'd love to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. We've heard from our 2 community economic developers this morning, and I'm pleased to introduce our 3rd speaker, Mitch Stringer. He's with the South Mississippi Electric Power Association, and so in that he's doing economic development, he's working with many communities across the state, and he's going to define that for you. It's a little bit different perspective he can show you from where he sits. He joined South Mississippi Electric as the Economic Development Manager in July of 2014. In his new position, he is responsible for marketing the SMEPA territory for economic development purposes. He oversees the recruitment of new industrial projects by promoting the assets within his members' territories. And before he was with SMEPA, he was actually the Global Project Manager with the Mississippi Development Authority, so I know he knows a lot of folks in this room. He was responsible there for recruiting new industrial clients to our great state. And before MDA, Mitch worked as the Director of Business Development for the Madison County Economic Development Authority. He holds a bachelor degree in Business Administration from Mississippi State University and is a graduate of the Economic Development Institute at the University of Oklahoma. Please help me welcome Mitch Stringer.
I'd be remiss if I did not add to my bio just a bit. When I got an email from Blake Wilson, he said to keep it brief. And I failed to mention my beautiful and loving wife, Kelly, who is a mother to our 1-year-old daughter, Elizabeth. So if anyone does see her, please mention that I did mention her in my bio, since Chad and Cary did so as well. Thank you all for having us this morning. It's a great group to be along with some developers that we are involved in throughout the state. I thought what I'd first try and do is just give you a brief overview of South Mississippi Electric, just for those of you that aren't familiar with us, so that you can have an idea of how we go about our economic development practice. Now, as you can see by the map, we have 11 member co-ops throughout the state, all south of 20 and then over through the Delta. South Mississippi Electric is actually a generation and transmission cooperative, so we produce all the power that we sell to our 11-member co-ops, and that might be a little much, but just to give you an idea of the breadth of our size throughout the state. We cover about 50% of the state. I think we hit anywhere from 57 of the 82 counties. Generation all over the state for 8 sites with about 13 generating units. As Chad mentioned, we've rolled out some solar throughout the state, and we're rolling out a solar plant there in Hattiesburg in the next couple of months. So to zoom in just a little bit, for those of you in the Delta, you're probably very familiar with these electric power associations that do serve you power: Coahoma, Delta Electric, Twin County, and Yazoo Valley. They actually joined South Mississippi Electric in the 80s, where we started out as a South Mississippi co-op, but added these guys in the 80s to bring it around. I forget this right here in front of me. Southwest Mississippi, Magnolia, Purple Valley, Coast, Singing River, Dixie, and Southern Pine make up our 7 members in the southern portion of the state that we work with. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we are and the different communities that we deal with throughout the state. As Christy mentioned, we do have various ones that we deal with, from Cary and Greenville to Chad and his great group in Hattiesburg. How we view it at South Mississippi Electric is focusing on these sites. We feel like on the readiness scale, we need to be ready based on that competitiveness study that MEC funded a few years back. We went back and looked at all of our sites that were submitted for that. We looked at the strengths, we looked at the weaknesses that they pointed out from our infrastructure and what we provided and what we could provide for new projects coming to the state. So we've gone throughout our entire site portfolio to look at each one of those and say, okay, what can we do here? What needs to be done? Let's get a timeline together, some cost estimates. So, because every day when these RFIs come rolling through from MDA or from the local community, we're tasked with providing timelines and cost and rates for the new company. So we want to be ready to roll that out. In an effort to help our communities, Chad mentioned having the strong companies, the business involvement. Cary talked about his organization and what they've gone through to work on these sites with due diligence and things like that. So we feel it's extremely necessary from our end of things to help land clients on these sites that we help with the due diligence. So we're identifying these sites that need to come up to site certification grade and assisting with those. One example lately is Brookhaven. Garrett Combs over in Lincoln County, they've had a industrial park there in Brookhaven for several years now, and they decided they want to be a little more proactive and put in a spec building. So they're putting in a 50,000 square foot spec building that's expandable up to 200,000 square feet that we'll hope to put a nice size manufacturer in the next year or so. So we thought it would be valuable for us and for Southwest Electric to assist with that prospect and help with some of the site prep so that we could move that project along. Another direction we took was over in Newton. Recently, Rusty McMillan landed a nice size Buer lumber project, $85 million, about 250 jobs. We helped with some of the wetlands studies over there to get things up to speed so that Buer could jump in and get moving. I was over there yesterday, and the amount of dirt that has been moved and the pad is almost ready, almost a month and a half ahead of time. So they're blowing and going over there in Newton because Rusty and his group was ready with all the information and ready to jump in there and clear some property. Another program we use at the electric cooperatives is the Red Leg grants out of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And that can go in to assist companies and communities on these projects, low interest loans that are moved through our office to assist these companies, whether it's infrastructure, just capital investment, or whatever the case may be. But so if your communities are interested and have projects that would work with this program, we'd be happy to work with you. We've even gone outside the territory. We've served some municipal groups up in Greenwood to get some projects moving, but be aware of all the grants that are out there, all of the the systems from MDA that can help you, but there's several other out there that can help your communities move along. Another thing we feel as the power company is that Jim Craig and I on our team feel that we're an extension of Chad and Cary's group to be there and do whatever we can, whether it's running studies, running data surveys, running drive time routes for everybody, for these companies to see. We feel like we can provide those to those communities that don't have it at that time. Another thing we like to do is travel and market with our local companies and communities to do outreach and marketing for them so that we can help out and assist and help land those companies within our communities and within our service territory. That's about it. I know these guys went over, so I wanted to just quickly blow through this and give you guys questions for time, but since I'm a team player, I'll go ahead and sit down. Thank y'all.
Thank you so much. This is a great panel, and I think we need to do 2 rounds of applause. First, for the $100 million investment that Chad announced. Let's give that a round of applause. We didn't stop to do that. And then for all of our panelists, for the information that they shared and the advice that they shared with us today. I know you can take some of that home to your community. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much, and we're have a few minutes, so I have a question that I'd like to pose to the panel. If you could rank the top 2 or 3 things that you think are important to recruiting new businesses to your community, or Mitch, in your situation, to your service area, what would they be as far as preparedness? Cary? Your mic's on.
I think for us, it's changing the perception, and that we don't have things that other areas do. I think that's the biggest thing in the workforce is probably the one that we're probably most focused on because we see the benefits of it. So it's like all of us. We're working in communities that people think you're not working and doing, and you are. It just takes time, as Chad has alluded to. There's many of these things drag on and work on through the process that takes years.
Thank you.
Really, I think you just have to respond accurately and promptly. I know that is simple advice, but you'd be amazed at the number of communities that do not probably respond as accurately or promptly as they need to. So you got to get in there, you got to know your stuff, and then you got to respond, and you got to meet the deadlines, and really you're trying to just survive to fight another day. You're not trying to win the project initially, you're trying not to be eliminated, and then when it gets down to it, you can put the necessary things on the table that'll help you get over the finish line.
One thing that I've seen recently that I think a lot of communities might not think about is having your existing industry buy-in. When these companies come in lately, they've been asking to sit down with 2 and 3 existing industries so they can sit in a closed-door meeting with HR, the CEO, or the CFO, whoever it may be, and ask them all these questions. And if you don't know what those existing industries are going to say, or that you don't know that those existing industries have a very good feel for the community, it can be pretty nerve-wracking. So for those of you that don't have a few strong existing industries that you have great relationships with, I would encourage you to do so.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I look around the room and I see individuals from communities that are well along in their economic development plans and their programs, and I see some people representing communities here that are maybe new to looking at economic development and recruiting to their area. Can you, any of you, speak to how they might get started? Those people that are just looking at, up here we have some great experience, but if you were a new community just looking at economic development and moving it forward, how would they do that?
Take a stab at that one. Basically, you just need to get in there and understand your assets. Before you do any promotion, you have to do preparation. And the preparation part may not be as glitzy or glamorous as going out and recruiting, but you're going to fail at recruiting if you're not properly prepared. So I encourage you, if you're in a new organization, a new community, understand your assets, meet with your leadership, understand their vision, what they want to see accomplished, and then once you have your assets properly packaged, then you can go out and recruit.
And kind of going along with what Chad earlier, if you're starting an organization, you really got to make sure you get yourself funded well, because if you get too dependent on one side, whether it's public or private, and they don't support you, then you're really in a jam. And I feel like I spend most of my time trying to educate, trying to tell people what we're doing, what we're working on, how we're doing this, how it affects this. There's a cause and effect to every part of it. But because of some of the things that happened before me, the Board of Supervisors wanted a monthly report from me, and initially I thought, well, this is a pain, but actually probably is a benefit for me to be in front of them every month. And I started going to the city council doing the same thing, just so I can tell them this is what we're working on and continuing to build that relationship. So if that's one plus I think I would offer is, make sure you're speaking to your public officials and tell them what you're doing, how you're doing it, and how the progression is. And every bit of this, as they will know, public officials will tell you, you can't make decisions quickly and get things done quickly. I mean, it just takes time to do it, and we all need to understand that there's a patience involved, which I promise you I struggle with, coming from the business world. But that would what I'd key on. Is like I say, just you continue your relationships locally and keep educating.
I would just recommend getting a kind of similar to what Chad said, pulling together a great group of stakeholders. If you're starting from scratch, bring together your utility companies, your electricity, your gas, your water, and several local community stakeholders along with your local elected officials, just so you all can get on the same page to get things going.
Great advice, gentlemen. Thank you so much. I wanted to take a minute and thank you all, too, for partnering with MEC so many times on issues that we look at statewide that help the business community and help us become more competitive as a state. All of your organizations have gone shoulder to shoulder with us many times to make this state a better place to recruit business and to expand the businesses we have. So I think we'll wrap up a little bit early today because I know these gentlemen are available at least for a few minutes, yes, to answer any questions individually that you have. I want to thank you for coming to our opening session and remind you that our next session, what's that? Okay. Our next session begins at 10:30 in the same room, and it's economic development, landing the big one. So we've done a little bit of that in the state recently, and we look forward to more. Thank you again to our panelists, and thank you for being here.